In 70 AD, Rome destroyed Jerusalem, killed over 1 million people, sold hundreds of thousands into slavery, burned the temple, scattered the survivors across 3 continents. By every historical measure, that civilization was finished. 2,000 years later, the same people, speaking the same language, practicing the same traditions, returned to the same land and built a functioning state in under a decade. No other civilization in recorded history has done this. Not the Romans, not the Greeks, not the Persians, not the Babylonians, not the Mongols. None of them. The question isn't whether it happened. It happened. The question is, how? And the answer is the most important survival blueprint ever documented. When Rome destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, it wasn't a military defeat. It was an attempt at civilizational erasure. The historian Josephus, a Jewish commander who surrendered to Rome and later wrote about the siege, documented what happened with clinical precision. Over 1 million people died during the siege and its aftermath. 97,000 survivors were taken as slaves. The temple, the center of Jewish religious and cultural life for 1,000 years, was burned to the ground. The Romans melted down its gold. The Arch of Titus in Rome still stands today, depicting soldiers carrying the temple's menorah in triumph. And then, 60 years later, Rome finished the job. In 135 AD, after a second Jewish revolt, Emperor Hadrian made a decision that historians consider one of the most deliberate acts of cultural destruction in the ancient world. He renamed the province. Judea became Syria Palestina. He renamed Jerusalem. Jerusalem became Aelia Capitolina. He banned Jews from entering the city on pain of death. He was trying to erase not just a people, but the memory that the people had ever existed there. It didn't work. And that is the most important fact in this entire video. In the chaos of 70 AD, as Jerusalem burned, a rabbi named Yochanan ben Zakkai made one of the most consequential decisions in the history of civilization. He asked the Roman commander Vespasian for one thing: not to spare Jerusalem, not to protect the temple, not to negotiate a military outcome. He asked for a small town called Yavneh and permission to open a school there. Vespasian agreed. It seemed nothing. A defeated people asking for a school. It was everything. At Yavneh, Yochanan and the surviving rabbis did something that had never been done before in human history. They systematically converted a land-based religion into a portable one. The temple was gone, so they replaced temple rituals with prayer, which required no building, no location, no physical infrastructure. The priests who served in the temple, their role was transferred to scholars and rabbis who could exist anywhere. The calendar, the laws, the traditions, all codified in text, written down, portable, reproducible anywhere in the world. They took everything that had been tied to a specific place and made it portable. The identity survived because it was no longer dependent on geography. No other civilization facing destruction made this transition. The Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, when their temples fell, their religions faded. Their identities were tied to their land. The Jewish identity was redesigned to survive without it. Here is a logistical problem that should have been impossible to solve. A dispersed people, scattered across Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia, with no central government, no army, no territory, no common language for daily life.
How do you keep that people coherent for 2,000 years? The answer was a knowledge network, a distributed system of scholars, texts, and communities that maintained a shared framework across every geography. The Talmud, compiled between 200 and 500 AD, was the operating system, a vast document containing not just religious law, but civil law, ethical reasoning, economic principles, medical knowledge, and communal governance frameworks. A Jew in Spain in 1100 AD and a Jew in Persia in 1100 AD had never met. They spoke different languages, they ate different food, they wore different clothes. They could walk into each other's community and immediately understand the law, the calendar, the obligations, the expectations. The network had no single point of failure. When one community was destroyed, Babylon, Alexandria, the Rhineland, the knowledge survived in dozens of other communities simultaneously. It was the world's first distributed backup system. 2,000 years before the Internet, a people with no territory maintained global coherence through a knowledge network that no army could destroy because it had no center to attack.
In 64 AD, just 6 years before Rome destroyed Jerusalem, the Jewish high priest Joshua ben Gamla issued a decree. Every Jewish community, regardless of size or wealth, was required to establish a school. Every Jewish child, not just the wealthy, not just boys of prominent families, every child was required to learn to read. In a world where literacy rates were perhaps 10 to 15%, this was radical. It was also the most consequential economic decision in the history of the Jewish people. A literate people can carry their skills anywhere. A literate people can read contracts, write agreements, navigate legal systems in foreign countries. A literate people can transmit knowledge to the next generation without physical infrastructure. When you cannot own land because you're a minority in someone else's country, your only reliable asset is what you carry in your head. The investment in human capital was not charity, it was survival engineering. The economic historian Maristella Botticini and the statistician Zvi Eckstein spent a decade studying Jewish economic history. Their conclusion, published in 2012, universal literacy, mandated 2,000 years ago, is the single factor that most explains Jewish economic and social mobility across every country and every century of the diaspora. 2,000 years of return on a single investment in education.
Every year, for 2,000 years, at the end of the Passover Seder, Jews around the world said 4 words: Leshana Haba'ah beJerusalem. Next year in Jerusalem. In Spain, in Babylon, in Poland, in Ethiopia, in New York, in Shanghai. The same 4 words every year for 2,000 years. This is not sentiment. This is mechanism. Every system of identity needs a destination, a place the story is moving toward. Without a destination, a dispersed people becomes assimilated. The children marry into local communities, the grandchildren don't remember the language, the great-grandchildren don't know the story. Within 3 or 4 generations, the identity dissolves. The 4 words prevented that dissolution for 2,000 years by keeping the destination alive in every generation, even generations who never expected to reach it in their lifetime. In 1948, those 4 words became possible to fulfill. Holocaust survivors, Jews expelled from Arab countries, communities from over 100 nations, people who had never met, who spoke 50 different languages, who had lived on 6 different continents, arriving at the same destination that their ancestors had named every year for 2 millennia. In its first 3.5 years, Israel absorbed 688,000 immigrants. The population doubled, while simultaneously fighting a war for survival. No other state in history has absorbed proportionately that many immigrants that fast while under military attack and remained functional. The destination had been kept alive long enough for the generation that could reach it to arrive.
4 systems. A portable identity that survives the loss of territory. A distributed knowledge network with no single point of failure. A universal investment in human capital as a survival mechanism. A destination, a shared story that the entire people is moving toward. America was built on 3 of these 4 systems. The American identity, for most of its history, was portable. It didn't require ethnic origin or religious background. It was an idea. Anyone could become American. The American knowledge network, the university system, the free press, the public library, was the most robust distributed knowledge infrastructure ever built. The American investment in public education, from the land-grant universities of 1862 to the GI Bill of 1944, was the closest any modern nation came to the Joshua ben Gamla standard. And the American destination, the city on a hill, the last best hope of mankind, the nation that demonstrated self-governance was possible, was the most powerful civilizational story of the modern era. In 2026, 3 of those 4 systems are under stress. The identity is contested. The knowledge network is fragmented by algorithm. The investment in education is declining. And the destination, the shared story of what America is moving toward, is the least clear it has been in a century. Israel's survival blueprint is not a religious document, it's an engineering manual. And the first lesson of that manual is the one America most needs to hear right now. Civilizations that survive catastrophe are not the ones with the strongest armies, they're the ones with the clearest answer to the question, who are we and where are we going?
In 70 AD, Rome was the most powerful civilization on earth. It had the largest army, the most advanced engineering, the most sophisticated legal system, the most extensive trade network. Rome is gone. The people Rome tried to erase are still here. History's most repeated lesson is not that the strong survive, it's that the resilient survive. And resilience, every time, in every civilization, across every century, comes down to the same 4 things: a portable identity, a distributed knowledge network, an investment in human capital, and a destination worth moving toward. The Bronze Age civilizations that fell last week, they were connected, they were sophisticated, they were powerful. They didn't have these 4 things. Next week, we look at the civilization that took Israel's survival blueprint and scaled it into the most powerful republic in the ancient world, that lasted 500 years, that invented every institution of governance that America was built on. The Roman Republic, before it became an empire, before it forgot what made it great. If you want to be there for that one, you already know what to do.